yourself called a control freak and you're thinking, no, I'm not a control freak. It's not me. It's everyone else. Well, if you find yourself in this situation of wanting to control everything, and when things don't go your way, you get frustrated, well, this episode of Me and My Health Up is exactly for you. It's just what you need. We're talking about the illusion of control and how to get back your self-mastery and how to rediscover yourself and get back yourself so you're less frustrated. So this is for someone that is constantly frustrated when people are not doing what you tell them to do, when you're not organizing and demanding that this is the way things need to happen. It's got to go my way. And if it doesn't go my way, I get frustrated and annoyed and angry. So if this is resonating with you, please tune in to this episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm the host, Anthony Hartcher, a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today I'm doing that for you on this topic of the illusion of control. So let's get into defining the topic and how you can self-identify or work out whether you are this person, and then what you can do about it. And in essence, it's about letting go and letting be and becoming who you ultimately want to be, as opposed to feel like you need to control everything. So this control, the whole thing around control is when we're feeling insecure. Ultimately, it is insecurities. It is when we're in survival mode and we are wanting things to happen around us how we know, well, where we're more certain of the outcome, because we're uncomfortable with uncertainty in that moment of survival mode. We don't want any more. We want more certainty. We strive towards certainty. We want to grasp certainty, because when we're certain, we're confident, we're assured, we know the outcome. We know if I do this, the outcome's going to be this. When we get really out of our comfort zone or in a point of feeling like I'm in survival mode, I'm just surviving, I'm just keeping my head above water, we go into control mode to drive this certain outcome, to get an outcome. And where does this come from? It comes from a primitive instinct to seek what we desire and to avoid what we don't want, to avoid being eaten, us to seek prey and to avoid the predator. That's what survival mode is. And both of those outcomes that we desire and we need for survival. So we need prey in order to grow and develop and to stay alive. We want to avoid the predator to avoid ultimately being killed and eaten, becoming someone else's food or becoming the prey of something else. And so the survival mode is ultimately to drive an outcome, either the thing that you desire, which is the prey, or the thing that you want to get away from, which is the predator, the thing you want to avoid, the people you want to avoid. And if you're finding yourself swinging between one and the other, you're in this survival mode. When we get in that survival mode, we then wanting to control to get the outcome. We want these pieces to align in order for me to get what I desire, or I want pieces to align this way so that I can get away from this person or get away from this thing or to escape. And so when we're chasing fantasies and trying to avoid nightmares, we're in this survival mode. How to acknowledge that? Well, it's when you're demanding everyone to do something that you want. That's you wanting to control the outcome. That's you ultimately wanting to get this specific outcome, and it's got to be this way. That's survival mode. When we're in thrival mode, we know the direction, but we're not definite, or we're not absolutely black and white. It's more the black and white around the outcome. So I know in terms of the podcast that I want to reach more people and enhance and enlighten their well-being. But I realize that this podcast is not for everyone. So I'm not going to get every person on this earth. So I don't have this black and white outcome in terms of the number of people I reach. I'm going to reach those that resonate with what I share and the guests I interview and the education I'm sharing. And that's all dependent on where that person's at and where they want to go. And so I'm not fixated on a particular number. I just ultimately would like to see that I've got a constant listener base and I'm adding some value. People keep listening to episodes, and that means ultimately I achieve my outcome, which is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. But I'm not black and white as to how that looks. I have some idea that I want people to stay engaged. I want to provide engaging content, but I'm not fixated on a particular number, like 1 million listeners, for example, and I've got to have 1 million listeners by this such and such a date. If I get fixated and the outcome I want or the result I want is black and white, then I'm going to go about it in a way that drives that outcome and force it. I'm going to force it, as opposed to with what I do around this podcast, it's more flow. I enjoy doing it. I love doing it. I find content and I research content and I love delivering it, and I keep practicing my delivery. And obviously over the episodes I've gotten better, but there's still room for improvement. And that's what I love. It's the art and the science coming together. So getting back to this thing of control, if you've got a black and white and it's got to be this way, and then you'll start telling people they got to do it this way, then it's you trying to control the outcome. You trying to control others in order to get the outcome you desire, or trying to control things and make them manipulate and contort in ways that they probably don't in order to achieve a particular outcome. And ultimately, if that outcome isn't exactly the black and white outcome that you are fixated on, then you get frustrated, you get annoyed. And so what can happen is just frustration, and you'll feel that you're always pushing, and there's no flow to your life. So if you feel that life's a push or it's a drag, then it's because you have this fixation on the way life must be or should be, as opposed to embracing it for as it is and knowing what ultimately resonates with you and doing more of that and allowing more flow to come into that, as opposed to driving a particular outcome. And this is where what I'm sharing around the illusion of control. Ultimately, we only have this sense of control over the way we respond to things. So we perceive things, we get information in, we process it, and we deliver an output. That's the only area that we have ultimate control over, is us. So the way we see things, how we see it, and then how we process that, and then what we do as a result of processing the sensory input, and drives an output, which is either a response in terms of you doing something or saying something, and that's where we have our control. So what we want to work on is how we see things and how we process things and what we do as a result of that. And the way in which we want to go about this, the best way to do this is go about seeing things as they are, as opposed to wishing they were something else. And so it's understanding what you're seeing or perceiving is the fullness, and not looking at an element of that and extracting that element and getting attached or desiring more of that one element, and then getting, having this attachment to this is the way this got to be, and then getting frustrated when that doesn't come in that exact form. So in order to get more into that flow state, we need to have this relinquishing of this belief that we can control others. We can influence others. We want to influence them if it's in their best interest, and not ultimately if it's just in your best interest and not in their best interest. So this is really important in terms of seeing that how you perceive things is you want to look at the whole, as opposed to looking only at one aspect. Like, for example, if you observe someone's behavior and you're thinking, oh yeah, I like when they do this sort of behavior to me, it really supports me and I just want that and more of that, and you become attached and dependent on that. When they do the opposite to that behavior, you get frustrated and you think, why can't you just do that other thing more often and not this thing? And so you start to really resent when they do the opposite to what you are ultimately fixated on, and have a fantasy over that they'll only ever do that action and not the opposite. So what we want to see each other as whole human beings, and have both sides to everyone. There's a nice and mean side to everyone. There's times at which they support you, and there's times at which they challenge you. And ultimately, it's how we perceive it. And if we're getting challenged, we want to see the benefit to us in being challenged, as opposed to seeing it as they're not doing as I say or what I want them to do. You want to see that challenge as how it benefits you. And if you start to see this sort of person as they are, as opposed to this is the way you want to control them and they do this all the time for you, you'll be frustrated when they do the opposite. And if you just allow them to be them, what you'll find is you're more accepting of who they are. You more respect who they are, as opposed to start resenting when they do the opposite, and then just love them for when they do what you want them to do. So this illusion of control is all about how you perceive things, how you process it, and then what you do as a result of that. And so if you want to let go of this illusion of control, you want to focus on how you see things. And are you seeing the completeness, the wholeness, or are you fixated and have a fantasy on one-sided outcome, for example, a fantasy, as opposed to seeing the wholeness and seeing that it's all entangled and it's all one, and seeing that it all serves you in a particular way. When someone does something that challenges you, it's serving you. There's a benefit to it if you look for that benefit. So I really wanted to just share this bit of insight around when we get into this control freak state, that we're feeling insecure and that we're in survival mode, and we're going to force outcomes and we're going to demand certain results from others, and we're going to get frustrated when they don't do it, what we actually ask them or tell them to do. In order to start removing yourself or ascending your awareness, is start to look at how, if when they do the opposite, how it serves you and how it benefits you. It's there to teach you something. It's there to help you grow and to help you break this illusion of control, and to realize that the only thing you can control is yourself and no one else. So that's really what I wanted to share around this illusion of control, is that when people don't do the things that you want them to do, they're there to teach you a lesson and to break your fantasy and attachment to a fixated outcome, the way things have to be, and allow you to be more in flow and allow you to be more you. So I hope that helps. If you found this interesting, please share it with others and continue to tune in and continue to health up. And I continue to want to help you enhance and enlighten your well-being on this journey of podcasting. Thank you.
Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast, and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages, or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.